Hi guys, this is Debbie with Debbie J's Crafting Corner. Welcome to day 2 of my Christmas crafting series. Today I'm making some elegant snowflake ornament cards using heat embossing and the Snowflake Cascade Stamp Set from Gina K. This stamp set is from this year's Stamptember release at Simon Says Stamp, so it may not be available. However, you can use other stamps for this design. I'll be creating an ornament in the center of my card, so I'm positioning this half ornament stamp where I want the top to be. I'll be heat embossing the image, and I'm using Wow Embossing ink. But first, I actually remembered to grab my anti-static powder tool, and I'm generously covering the card panel so that the embossing powder will only stick to the stamped image. Now I'm stamping that down using my Tonic Tim Holtz stamp platform. I love red and gold together for Christmas, so I'm using gold embossing powder for the ornament. I covered the stamped image with Recollections gold detail embossing powder. Next, I'll hit it with my Marvy heat gun. I just love watching the powder melt, and this gold is just simply beautiful. Now I'll create the rest of the ornament. This stamp set is designed so that you can include a sentiment in the ornament. I'm using the Happy Holidays and lining it up just below the embossing that I've already done. Then I'll reposition the half ornament stamp below it to form the bottom half of the ornament. Just like before, I'll ink up those stamps using my Wow embossing pad after using my powder tool again. And now I'll cover that section of the stamping again with that same gold embossing powder. I have to say, I think this is probably my favorite part of making these cards. Every time I heated up the embossing and saw that gold powder just pop, it's just gorgeous. I just got so excited. I'm going ahead and cleaning up because I don't want to mix any of my powder, so I went ahead and put away the gold. I am going to do some more embossing on this, but not with the gold. So I'm putting that card panel back into my stamp platform, and I'm lining up the little bow. The little string and bow that is the top of the ornament. Decided not to use the ornament topper, instead just to use this piece, so I'm going ahead and getting that positioned in there, and I decided I wanted some snowflake accents, so I'm putting those down in that lower right hand corner. Oops, I almost forgot to remove that other stamp. And I'm pretty proud of myself on this one. I'm getting better at using my powder tool every time that I need to. You guys know that I forget a lot. For the bow and string, I'm going to use some versafine onyx black ink and clear embossing powder. And then for the little snowflakes, I'm going to use the Wow embossing the Wow embossing ink and some white embossing powder. I decided to heat them both since they are small images at the same time, so I'm cleaning up in between the two different embossing powders. These are all from Recollections, and the bottles look identical except for where I've marked on the cap and of course on the label. I'm having to put some more of the white on there because I missed a little bit of it, but I think that looks so pretty. Now I'm going to go ahead and heat those up with my Marvy heat tool as well. And just watch how bright white that turns out when you heat it with the heat gun. This just is so, so, so pretty. To balance the design, I'm also adding a few of those little snowflakes in the upper left-hand corner as well. So I'm going to go ahead and ink those up with the WOW embossing ink and use that that Recollections white embossing powder as well on these. Okay, I want to know, did anybody catch my mistake? I forgot to use my powder tool. So I'm having to find a brush so I can brush all of that off. Then I'm going to go back and redo these little snowflakes. So I'm using my embossing tool. And then I'm going to re-ink it and re-add that embossing powder. Now the reason that I needed to do that is because the embossing powder was not sticking just to the snowflakes, it was sticking to other areas, and those images are so fine, it would have been very, very, very hard for me to try to pick off or brush off all of the excess. Now I'm going to go ahead and heat that re-embossed that area again, and I just love the way that that white just pops on the card when you heat it up. I'm going to go ahead and cut down this card panel about 1/4 inch on each of the sides so that it's a little smaller. I do want to add a mat before I add it to my card base. And when I get to the top, I decide not to cut it quite at 1/4 because I want to leave some of that string. So then I'm going to go ahead and turn it all the way around and cut a little bit more off of the bottom. So this is going to measure 5 inches by 3 3/4. And next I'm going to cut down a piece of red foil cardstock. This is also from Recollections. So this one's going to be about 4 inches by 5 1/4 when we get finished with it. And then I decided I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to the card. So I'm going to create kind of a vignette, if I can say it correctly. So it'll make the ornament part of the card kind of pop and be the focal. So what I'm doing is I'm adding some Cranberry Fizz ink from Catherine Pooler. I love this ink. And I'm just inking the edges and right around the corners of that card panel with all of my embossing. You probably noticed that I inked over some of the embossing, so my little snowflakes turned a little pink. That's okay, the ink just rubs right off, so I'm grabbing a microfiber cloth and just wiping those so all the extra ink away. I decided to also deepen the red of that foil cardstock a bit too. So I'm taking some black soot distress ink and just inking the edges and again creating kind of a vignette. So I'm inking the edges and blending in just slightly along all of the edges of that. So it's going to basically deepen up the color right around the mount without getting rid of the shine. Now we'll start assembling the card. Because I'm using foil cardstock, usually my dot liner does not adhere to it as well as I'd like, so I'm going to go ahead and use some double-sided adhesive tape for this. This is about a 1/4 inch tape, and I'm just putting that all around the edges, and then when I pull the tape off, the release paper rather, I'm going to go ahead and create those little handles that you've seen me use quite a bit lately to try to get perfect positioning in the center of that panel. You may have noticed that I left the release paper on 2 of the corners, so I put one of those corners down and then position my card panel and then press the rest of it down and remove the flags. This makes it a lot easier to get that perfect placement. This is a pretty flat card, but I do want to add a little dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and add some Artisa foam tape to the back of my card panel before putting it down onto the card base. I'm again doing the same thing with those little handles or little flags, leaving the 2 of the corners, opposing corners, with the tape on, with the release paper still on there, so that I can put one of them down and position it and get perfect placement in the center. I have struggled for the last couple of years to be able to get any of my card panels to go on there straight, and now I'm trying to make sure I leave a little bit of white space around, and I'm trying to do more than just my typical 1/8 of an inch where I can just use a paper trimmer, and it's turning out much better now that I'm doing it this way. I'm also wanting to add a little extra sparkle. You know how I am, so I'm grabbing some of my Hobby Lobby gems, and I'm going to put one of those little gems in each of the little snowflakes. So the little white snowflakes, they're going to have a gem right in the center, and I'm adhering all of that down with my art glitter glue. Okay, I know, you'd think that I would be done now, but what I decided to do is I decided to go ahead and make an envelope to go with it. So I'm using that red Recollections cardstock to create my card envelope, and using my envelope punch board. Now, my camera wasn't on when I was doing the punching and scoring, so I'm going to leave you a link here to where I created an envelope in a recent video. Now, on one of the flaps, on one of the larger flaps, I'm going to go ahead and line up that same snowflake with a different sentiment. This time I'm using the sentiment "Wishing You Joy," and what's nice is that since I've already scored it, I can line it up, basically lined up with that scored edge. And since I'm using my Tonic Tim Holtz platform, I'm able to remove the cover and be able to see exactly what I'm doing and position my stamp platform just perfect. Then I can put the top back on and stamp it down with some embossing ink. I'm using that same gold embossing powder on that flap and just covering that image really well, and then I'll heat that with my heat tool, and it is just gorgeous when that melts. I love it. One of the really neat things about this card design is it's pretty easy to do. It does take a little bit of time, and there is a lot of embossing and that sort of thing, but this is one that you could very easily mass produce, and it is such an elegant design. Anyone would love to get this card. And what I think would be really fun is that when they see the envelope in the mail, they know it's not a bill, it's bright red, it's got embossing on there, and they know that it is something special. Since the stamping and embossing is all done, now we just have to put the envelope together. So I am just folding on all of the score lines and burnishing it down with my bone folder, and then I'll use some double-sided adhesive tape to seal it all together. That finishes up this project for today. I just love how this card turned out, and it was so much fun, and the embossing is just so gorgeous. I went ahead and made another card, this time in blue and silver, and I think that these cards are just wonderful. I'm probably going to go back and make quite a few more just for my own personal mailing. These are just gorgeous. Thank you so much for dropping by. I hope that you have been inspired to do some Christmas crafting, and I would love to see what you create. So come join my Facebook group, Crafting with Debbie, and show us your creations. I've left a link in the description box down below. And if you create anything using ideas from one of my Christmas crafting videos, please be sure to post a picture on social media and tag me at #DebbieJ'sCraftingCorner and at #DJCCChristmas2020. You can also see all of my Christmas crafting videos for 2020 by clicking on #DJCCChristmas2020 down in the video title. Here are some other videos that you may be interested in. Thank you again so much for dropping by, and remember, if I can make it, you can too.